Namaskar. Welcome to this session. We are coming to understand metaphysics or metaphysical precept, which is threshold between physics and metaphysics. What I mean to say is that whatever will be postulated today is also a metaphysical aspects and cannot be matter of perception. It is revelation of our seers and sages, and that phase is post Vishesha, mentioned in the Sutra by Patanjali. The phenomenal world that we see around, phenomenal universe that we see around, with our naked eyes or with telescopes and microscopes, the subtle manifest aspects which are not visible to naked eyes but to assisted senses such as microscope, telescope, radio telescope, Hubble telescope, electron microscope. So from electron microscope to Hubble telescope, so many visible things which are not otherwise visible to our eyes. So the thing is, there are certain things which are beyond these mechanical insights, mechanical assistance to our eyes and ears, which are our basic senses of knowledge. And this is a deemed known to students of yoga or Patanjali's philosophy of yoga, and that is why it doesn't get an express mention in the topic that we considered so far. Alinga to linga matra to avishesha, and avishesha to vishesha. These are all samadhi objects. These were revealed by sages and seers, Rishis and Munis, yogis, and they put it in the form of Shastra, and therefore we get these postulations from Shastras and Upanishads and Darshana Shastras, which are views and visions of specially equipped human beings, specially qualified human beings, specially empowered human beings who are called yogis, jnanis, rishis, munis, saints, sages. So they have told us and they have given this to us through their Shastra Upadesha. So Patanjali Darshana students are supposed to be familiar with this topic, and that is called Panchikaranam, quintuplication. You should recall that there was a passing mention to concept of Panchikaranam in Vyasa Bhashya, that Akasha has one tanmatra and one guna, Vayu has two, Teja has three, Up has four, and Prithvi has five. And this was considered during our delineation. We saw the atoms of Akasha, and then Vayu, and then Teja, and then Agni, and then Up and Prithvi. So this was already considered. And this is up to Vishesha Parva, particularized phase of Prakruti in cosmological unfoldment. Now comes the phase of Panchikaranam, which is also cosmological scheme, and that is the threshold for us to get our manifest phenomenal universe around us, which is infinitely spreaded and spreading, and perhaps ever spreading, constantly spreading. So Panchikaranam, it is quintuplication. What is this Panchikaranam? It should be understood like this, that if we turn our head up and face towards the sky, we say this is sky. But there is only 50% element of space, principle of space in Akasha over our heads. Similarly, if you stand on the seashore or enter the sea and go into the middle of the sea, where you have sea on all the sides extending up to horizon, that sea is only 50% of element of water. If you blaze a fire in front of you, bonfire, and you see the flames rising, it is only 50% element of fire, element of teja. The air that you see in atmosphere is only 50% of element of air. And what is under your feet? Earth. And if you dig the earth and go down a couple of kilometers under the surface of the earth, yet it will be only 50% element of earth. What about other 50%? So for numenal creation to become phenomenal creation, the matters, the five elements amalgamate, get unified. Until that happens, the matter is not visible matter. The matter is not sensible matter, sensible matter, cognizable matter, perceptible matter. So anything to become manifest, there must be Panchikaranam. The five elements have to get fused together. And that is why even today in the view of modern science, we come across a postulation that all matters exist in all matters. The ecology tells us. The ecological postulation is that all matters exist in all matters. Then only it becomes a manifest matter. So, earth element to become earth matter, water element to become water matter, fire element to become fire matter, air element to become air matter, space element to become space matter, they all have to come together. And that is called Panchikaranam. The Panchikaranam is postulated in Upanishads starting from Karanam, and then it is extended into the postulation of Panchikaranam. The point is, for anything to be manifest for us, to become a sensory object for us, to become mental object, sensory object, empirical object, all the matters have to amalgamate. They have to come together. They have to get fused. then only it becomes phenomenal universe. And for the phenomenal universe to come about, there is something called as Panchikaranam in the archetypal plan, in archetypal scheme, that the elements are fused together, amalgamated, all the five are in all the five. So when it becomes manifest Akasha, there are Prithvi, Ap, Tej, Vayu, Akash. When it is manifest air to be felt, to be sensed, to be used, then it is Prithvi, Ap, Tej, Vayu, Akash. When it is manifest fire, that you can be experiencing it, seeing it, having cognition, perception of it in the form of fire, what we call as flames, there must be Prithvi, Ap, Tej, Vayu, Akash. So is the case of Up Tattva. For Up Tattva to become element of matter of water, a liquid matter, or what element of water of matter, the element of water is not exclusive thing there. It must be Prithvi, Ap, Tej, Vayu, Akash. So also, when it is manifest Prithvi matter in the form of boulder, stone, rock, metal, earth under your feet, there must be Prithvi, Ap, Tej, Vayu, Akash. So that is the archetypal plan to bring the numenal elements to become manifest matter. So it becomes usable, workable, perceptible, cognizable. So that is the topic of Panchikaranam. Now when they come together, it is not a compound. There is a system to bring together the five elements. So if something is manifest Prithvi matter, such as rock, boulder, metal, or very earth that is under our feet, there is only 50% of element of earth, and the rest of the 50% is shared by other four elements in 12.5% each. That's the mathematics. So it is 50% of earth in earth plus 12.5% and plus 12.5% and plus 12.5% and plus 12.5% of each other element apart from earth. So Up, Tej, Vayu, Akash will account for 12.5% to form matter earth, earthly matter, solid matter, opaque matter, earth-like matter. Now when it is water, the water as an object that we see in water bodies such as rivers and lakes and ponds and oceans, or for instance a cup of glass full of water, fully filled with water, has only 50% element of water. Although the glass is full of water, 100% of water in that container, on glass, there is only 50% of element of water, and 50% is shared by other four elements apart from Up. Then it is Prithvi, Tej, Vayu, Akash, 12.5 each, 12.5 each, 12.5 each and 12.5 each. So in case of flame, fire, manifest fire, object fire, there is only 50% of element of fire, and rest of the 50% is shared by other four elements, namely Prithvi, Up, Vayu, Akash, 12.5 each in percentage. So is the case of air. A cylinder filled with air. You might say the cylinder is fully filled up with air, some kind of gas. Yet there will be only 50% of element of air and 50% will be shared by other four elements such as Akash, Tej, Up, Prithvi. In the space over the head, above the head, or even if you enter that space, if you go into the outer space and you have nothing but space and space and space around, it is only 50% element of space, and then 50% is shared by other four, namely Vayu, Tej, Up, Prithvi, 12.5% each. So this mathematics comes in metaphysics, and that topic of metaphysics is called Panchikaranam, Panchikruta Tattvam. So they become Panchikruta, 5 together. That's why it is quintuplication. That is how we get the basis for manifest matter, which is manifest for our perception, sensation, cognition, usability, functionality. So that is called Panchikaranam. And that is why what ecology has postulated, the metaphysics of Indian philosophical systems have postulated from time without beginning that all matters exist in all matters, all elements exist in all elements, and then only it becomes phenomenal. And therefore you say this is star, this is planet, this is ocean, this is mountain, this is rose, this is lotus, this is fire, this is wind. So the manifest matter becomes operative, and then it becomes workable in the phenomenal universe. And that is why we get the phenomenal universe around us, which is again spreading infinitudinally. So for unmanifest to become manifest, there has to be this Panchikarana phase. Until Vishesha Parva, it is all unmanifest for us. And that's why they are Samadhi objects. Therefore, there is for Vishesha plane, there is Vitarka Anugata Samadhi. That's the first stage of Samadhi. And then progressively there is Vichara Anugata, Ananda Anugata, Aspita Anugata Samadhi. So these are all Samadhi objects which got mentioned so far, Alinga, Linga Matra, Avishesha, Vishesha. These are not sensory objects. These are not objects for empirical mind, empirical intelligence. And for them to come to empirical plane, whereby our functional life commences with help of the matters, Panchikaranam is must. And it is because of Panchikarana you get objects of the form of Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. So these are 5 sensory objects. Shabda means auditory object. So when you are able to hear something, in that audition there is only 50% element of space. If it is reaching your ears, if the sound is reaching your ears, there is only 50% element of sound, and then other 50% is shared by other aspects, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. So it is so minimal that when you are hearing something, the auditory waves which reach your ears do not have smell, do not have vision, do not have sight, they don't become visual objects. It's merely auditory object. Yet, the metaphysics tells us that it is Panchikruta. If it is not Panchikruta, it will not fall to your ears. So, the Vishayas are Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. These objects, because of Panchikaranam, are sensory objects. Therefore, their senses are able to grasp them, receive them. The Grahana Karya, the Grahanam of senses, is because of the Panchikruta objects. And that is why we had this mention during the delineation on Prakruti, Akashad Vayoh, Vayor Agni, up, and from up Tattva, Prithvi Tattva. So we saw that Taittiriya quotation, Akashad Vayor Agni, Abhyam Prithvim. That means these are 5 generations and not 5 elements. These are 5 generations of elements, and each generation imbibes something from previous generations. Like we inherit from our ancestors certain qualities. So, these are 5 generations. The Prithvi is the last generation. Prithvi inherits from Up, Tej, Vayu, Akash. Up inherits from the earlier one, which are Tej, Vayu, Akash. Tej inherits from Vayu, Akash. Vayu inherits from Akash. So that's why metaphysically the gunas were namely 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in Akash, Vayu, Tej, Up, Prithvi. So these are 5 generations, and this was quite impressively conveyed to you that these are not 5 elements but 5 generation of elements. They are generators. Akash generates Vayu, Vayu generates Tej, Tej generates Up, and Up generates Prithvi. Element of space generates element of Vayu, element of Vayu generates element of fire generates element of Up, and element of Up generates element of Prithvi. So you can see the inheritance. And that is why Prithvi has 5 atoms of Prithvi, Up, Tej, Vayu, Akash. Up has 4 of Up, Tej, Vayu, Akash. Tej has 3, namely Tej, Vayu, Akash. Vayu has 2, namely Vayu, Akash, and Akash has 1. So this metaphysical precept was considered in our delineation in our earlier sessions. So that therefore we get implied mention of Panchikaranam. And this Panchikaranam is the matter of this universe, where you get objects of 5 forms, namely Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. And therefore they become objects of our senses, and therefore they become objects of our mind and intelligence. So this is that aspect of Panchikaranam, that quintuplication makes the unmanifest into manifest. Unmanifest to empirical process becomes now manifest to empirical process. Therefore, our brain can register, our brain can perceive, our brain can cognize, our mind can sense. Our senses can be sensing those. And that becomes material for this universe, which is from a smallest dust particle which is on the earth, that we can see it, to largest celestial manifestation in the form of, say, largest star. Largest star. Despite being large, it is invisible to naked eyes. But it is so large, so large, so large, that if it is kept in place of sun, 93 million miles or 150 million kilometers away from Earth, it would engulf Mercury, Venus, Earth and Mars. They will all be gone into its belly. Such huge star has been identified so far, up to 21st century. It is such huge star. So it is such a huge manifestation, yet it is not visible to naked eyes unless you have telescope, radio telescope, Hubble telescope. It will not be visible because it is such a long distance, light years away from here, and therefore it doesn't become our object as a twinkle, twinkle little star. You need to have a Hubble telescope, radio telescope to be sighting it, which will again be like a dot. But in fact, it is such huge. That's the huge, biggest body identified so far in the cosmos. The largest star is the largest body so far identified in our cosmos, in our universe. Nothing is larger single object than that. It has a diameter of nearly 225 million miles. Diameter of 225 plus million miles. Such huge is that manifestation. Yet it is invisible to our naked eyes. It is because of it is so remotely placed. It is so remotely in the space that you need radio telescope and Hubble telescope to sight it, and when you sight it, it will be just a tiny thing. So the point is, the entire manifest creation, which becomes objects of our mind, objects of our senses, objects of our brain, objects of our faculties, are because those objects are quintuplicated. Not having quintuplicated, it would remain only samadhi object and not empirical object. And that is the metaphysics at the grossest plane called Panchikaranam. And then we get all kinds of manifestations which become of the form of sound or touch or vision or taste or smell. Shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha. Our sensory complex doesn't have any sixth organ. Now, why do we have 5 organs? Because metaphysics postulates there are only 5 objects. Because there are only 5 elements. There is no 6th element which would entail a 6th sense for us. There are 5 elements. The whole universe is made up of 5 elements. And therefore we have 5 senses. Because the 5 elements quintuplicated when they turn out 5 forms: Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. And then something is beyond that, which is intellectual matter, matter for intelligence. buddhi. So that is called atindriya jnanam. So indriya jnanam is fivefold. There is no sixth organ because there is no sixth object. There is no sixth object because there are only five elements. And there is no sixth element. So this Panchikaranam becomes the threshold for the visible universe, cognizable universe, perceptible universe, and graspable universe on one hand, and on the other hand, transcendent. So, the last phase of metaphysics is Panchikaranam, or the last phase for our visible world is Panchikaranam, which itself becomes invisible for us. We cannot be seeing how five elements are coming together. It is archetypal mind which decides on percentage and does that combination of 50 plus 12 and a half plus 12 and a half plus 12 and a half plus 12 and a half. So that is engineered by the archetypal mind behind creation. And that's how we get the world of matters around us. And then we have these five kind of matters. So with that we will get manifest objects in the form of Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. And then we get the matters around us, which are again classified into three kinds of matters: solid matter, gaseous matter, and fluid matter. So today the science speaks about solid matter, fluid matter, and gaseous matter. Ghana padartha, vayu rupa padartha, drava rupa padartha. So we get these padarthas, objects which are either solid or fluid or gaseous. So that gives the entry into physics. And that is our boundary. We can't go beyond it in our empirical process. It is only with samadhi that we will be able to go past the whole physics of the universe, the physical manifestation of the universe. And this physical manifestation of the universe in the form of solid matter, gaseous matter, liquid matter is because of the Panchikaranam, quintuplication. So from quintuplication onwards, it becomes a metaphysical topic. But when we see the creation process, the first one is alinga, then comes linga matra, then comes avishesha, then comes vishesha, and then comes sthula srushti, gross creation, which is matter for our perception through the senses. And here onwards is the realm of physics. So the whole physics is not going to go beyond and therefore it is called metaphysics. Therefore it is called meta, beyond physics. And the first tier of metaphysics is Panchikaranam. Then second tier of it is Vishesha Parva. The third is Avishesha Parva. The fourth is Lingamatra Parva. And the final is Alinga Parva. So in metaphysics they speak about primeval matter, primordial matter, which is actually not matter at all. But that is causal matter called prakruti. that is alinga, markless. So there is primordial matter, primeval matter. For our convenience, we are translating it into English. Then there is supra matter. Then there is further grosser is inframatter. And then further grosser is material matter and then gross matter. So the material of the universe is quintuplicated matter. This should be understood. The material of the whole universe, from tiniest manifestation, microscopic electron, microscopic object, to Hubble telescopic objects such as the star which just now was referred to, the largest body in the cosmos, universe. The material for that is quintuplicated matter. So the amazing thing will be that even the sun, for us it is a fireball, yet there are 5 elements in it. All the sun is a fiery body, a star will be a fiery body, yet there will be 5 elements in it. So this is also an aspect of metaphysics which is deemed understood by a student of philosophical system. And that is why it doesn't get that express mention in Darshana Shastra. Certain things are assumed that a seeker of philosophy has knowledge of all this. And this knowledge comes through Adhyatma Shastra, comes through Upanishadic postulations and Shastric postulations. The Shastras tell us, Shruti, Smriti, they tell us. They get mentioned in those texts, and therefore a student of philosophy of yoga is expected to be aware of certain postulations. This particular postulation that the srushti, the creation, phenomenal creation is Panchikruta. And so that is the topic of Panchikaranam, which is the final leg of metaphysics. And once the Panchikruta material is available, then comes the realm of physics. Padartha Vijnana, Bhautika Shastra, Padartha Vijnana. So, today I wanted to slightly elaborate on this Panchikaranam topic, which is material for manifest creation, which is manifest to us either by naked eyes and naked faculties, or we need instruments such as electron microscope to telescope to radio telescope to Hubble telescope. We will be able to sight those. We will be able to have some vision of those. So that is the topic of Panchikaranam. And with this, the topic of prakruti is coming to an end. Now you should recall that Patanjali had mentioned the cause of sorrows. The cause of sorrow was drashtra drushya sanyogam. Drashtro drushya sanyogo heya hetuhu. This conjunction of drashta and drushya is cause of sorrow. And therefore, the drushya and drashta were to be explained, described and defined. And Patanjali opted to describe drushya tattva first. And therefore the drishyam was described in the two sutras, prakasha kriya sthiti shilam bhutendriyatmakam bhoga apavargartham drishyam vishesha vishesha linga matra alingani gunaparvani. So the whole drishya has been delineated in two sutras. And now what remains is describing drashta, because this was another factor of conjunction causing sorrows. So that metaphysical entity of drashta is yet to be described and discussed, and that is what is going to commence hereafter. So you should understand this sambandham. Why did we come to all this mention? We saw the whole prakruti. Why did we come to it? Because it was mentioned that prakruti in the form of drushya and purusha in the form of drashta, their conjunction is the cause of sorrow. And sorrow is something that we want to be avoiding it. Sorrow is something that we want to be overcoming it, avoiding it, escaping it, free from it. So the conjunction of drashta and drushya was the cause of sorrow. So the drushya category has been described, for which we spent so many sessions to understand drushya tattvam. Now the drashta, which is another factor of conjunction, needs to be understood, which is the purusha tattva, the metaphysical entity of spiritual entity. Atma tattva, purusha tattva. So prakriti tattva was discussed. Now purusha tattva has to be defined, described, delineated upon. And now therefore, now we are going to embark upon that aspect called drashta, the Atma tattva. So that will commence from our next session. So in order that you should understand the sambandham of what is going to be postulated, I finally gave you a little enunciation. So it told us why we came to discuss Prakriti, because maybe with so much of discussion of Prakriti, you have lost advertence on why this got mentioned. And therefore, I slightly took you back to dukkham, dukkha hetu, and then of course hanam hanopayaha. The chatur vyuhas are to be discussed and described. And now after the chatur vyuhas, we came to second vyuha. First vyuha, dukkha, was discussed. Then we came to cause of dukkham. The cause of dukkham was samyoga. The samyoga was of drashta and drushya. Therefore, the drushya was to be delineated upon and was delineated. Now the drashta is to be delineated, and therefore that is going to be the topic of the next session. So with that, we are ending the topic of Prakriti, which has come in two sutras to mention the ontology of Prakriti category. Now we have to understand the ontology of Purusha category, metaphysics of Purusha category. But that is for next time. So, namaskar all of you.